Thank you so much for being with us and for the film. I'll jump right in. It's late and we have, I think, a lot to cover.
Fine.
To start with, I was curious if you could speak about this. Is your first feature film, which I think is quite remarkable. It's there's an assurance to it that's extraordinary. And I wonder if you could speak about what it was about this subject matter that presented itself to you as your first feature-length film project, and what drew you to this time and this place and this kind of story in particular?
It all started with my thesis film back in college. It was a short film that's called The Neighbors. We shot that short film back at 2014. And that's like the proof of concept of this film. Then I started working like an editor. Back in Chile, I have edited, I don't know, like 5 or 6 films. And for me, editing, it's very important. And what I like about cinema, it's how subjective it is when it tells a story. So I wanted to make a film where that part of cinema is being used in the story. So I had in the back of my mind what I did in the short film and a couple of more things that I wanted to experiment. And back at 2020, we were in how you say it? Quarantena, lockdown. Yeah, and I saw a challenge to write a screenplay in 48 hours, and so I was in my house and said okay, and I started writing, and it took me like 50 hours, so I failed. But I had this screenplay, and I sent it to a producer that I work a lot, me editing, and he liked it, and I wanted to do it right away, like in a week or 2 weeks time of the shooting, and really with a low budget, just us financing. But he thought that he could get some money to make the film. And in, I don't know, like in 1 year, we had the funds of the government, and that was really shocking because it was my first, I don't know, postulation. I don't know, the first time that we tried to get the money, and we did. It was a small budget, but still it was bigger than what we could fund. And then we started the shooting. It took like 20 days, and then like a year of editing, and then a half year of sound editing. And for example, the music, the songs that are used, they are original songs because I wanted to sell the story in its own universe. So if, for example, if I used a Chilean song, a reel of that era, it was going to tell something that I didn't want to say. So for me, it was important that it had its own universe. It's not a real story. It's a mix of a lot of stories. And so the music, for example, started with the screenplay, and it was a long process. And so we shot it back at 2022, and we premiered last year, and like in November. And so that's the story of the film.
I think this subject of the dictatorship in the 70s and this sort of unease and distrust and paranoia and isolation is subject matter that is somewhat familiar to American audiences, I think, but largely through art, through film and fiction. And I'm curious, how did you find your way in via this story of an observer, this sort of oblique entry point of a man who's not involved and not actively fighting against these encroaching sort of forces of darkness, but who is aware and increasingly disturbed.
It all started when I was doing the investigation for the short film back at the university. So there, the crew actually went out and did some interviews. So we collect a lot of data, a lot of information. And back then, I remember I had nightmares. So it was all some things that I could watch, but I couldn't do anything. So, but I knew that I wanted to express that later on a film, and mixing all of these paranoia and nightmarish kind of imagery. So that was the starting point of the point of view from which I was going to tell the story, from the observer. Because for me, in movies, the sound design is very important, and I think that tells a lot about violence. And this movie was about violence, about fear, primarily. And that's why I wanted just to express that. And for example, my whole childhood, I live in this, I don't know how you call it here, but spare house. You have your wall, it's the wall of your neighbor. So you can hear a lot of things, and you just imagine what's going on. So for me, it was a very personal film, and wanting to express, I didn't live the time of the dictatorship. For me, I grew up in the 90s, so the theme that I touched, that I lived, it was impunity, and that was one of the themes that I wanted to explore in the film.
Having seen the film a few times now, I am so sort of interested in the frame narrative that you construct that is revealed only fully at the end, that the performer who we think of as Raúl is in fact a different character who is reading Raúl's story and projecting himself into Raúl's experience. Was that sort of framing structure always present from the short, or was that something that you built out into the feature?
For a couple of years after we premiered the short film, in festival they asked me if I wanted to do a feature film about the film, and my answer was always no. But then at the lockdown, I knew I wanted to tell a story where a character's journey was the same as us viewer watching a film, but that will be part essential of the story, of the narrative. So I knew that I wanted to do that, and that mixed with my other interests about the short film. So the film was from the base constructed on that. I don't know if it is a twist, because whatever the film shows, it's actually happened. The only thing that it changed or switch is the perspective. So it wasn't like it was all a dream. You know, it's the perspective from which we are telling the story that's changed. So yes, it was from the beginning thought out to do it like that.
I want to leave some time for audience questions, but first, could you tell us a bit about the models and the choice to position Raúl as a model maker? And I think there's the models, the figurines and the architectural models are so central to kind of the visual story. And I'm curious what the thinking was behind that choice, and also the execution, how the models were produced, and
the models. They start out. I don't think that they were present in the first draft, but I knew that I need some scales in the story. So this, I don't know, this kind of control that it's being projected in the different characters, the protagonist always had to have it in of something. For example, his work. He's controlling his universe. So I wanted that couple of layers from which I could tell the story, and also it gave the movie some new spaces, because I wanted to feel claustrophobic, but I didn't want the story to be claustrophobic when we shoot it. For example, the movie has a lot of exteriors, but when you remember the film, you think that it was all happening in the house. So that was what I wanted to show, for example. And I got that from, you are now going to have a retrospective on Shyamalan. And he talked about that, about science. I remember I watched the behind the scenes that he always talked about science. It was a claustrophobic film, but it has a lot of exteriors. They went to the town, but when you think about it, you think it all happened in the house. So I thought that was really important. And that's, for example, one of the features that I worked through the different drafts of the screenplay.
I'll tag on one more on the end of that question. I would love to hear a bit about the production design, because as you alluded to the sort of constraints of the budget and the production, but I think the detail with which you evoke this 1970s Santiago is very precise and very evocative. And could you just speak a bit about that?
Yes. Back in Chile, with production design, we call it dirección de arte, so it's a bit different, but the same. What I did was I started looking. I did a lot of interviews for the crew, and I found someone that's called Carla Molina, who showed me. She made these kind of miniatures sets, and that and her style of work was what I liked and why I wanted to work with her, because the crew was very young. I think I was the oldest, maybe. I don't know. I was like 30. So they were like 28 or something like that. And it demanded a lot of work from their part. For example, I know that she didn't sleep. So, for example, one of the models, she finished it like at 4 a.m. and the van picked up her at 5. So I know that she didn't sleep, and her team, and they worked really, really hard, because it was really important to the aesthetic of the film, the locations, all that. I didn't want to use CGI, so we used very few shots had some, I don't know, graffiti, deletes, and kind of that. But I integrate them very early in the pre-production. So I know they work like 3 weeks, yeah, with her team, wardrobe, miniatures. The miniatures, she did them with, I don't know, like 2 more people. But the nature of the budget didn't allow such a big crew. So, for example, the production design team, they may be 8 or 10 people at the most. So, for example, wardrobe had like 1 assistant, and the art runners were like 2 or 3, depending the day. In a good day, maybe there were 3. And it was like the camera crew. I think they were like 10 or something like that. And for example, and sometimes we have to divide our small crew in smaller units because of the time and the money, we couldn't have more days of shooting. So it was important to complete the quota that we have to make that day. And for example, there's a shot outside of the police station. That day we were divided in 3 teams, but that big shot. I don't know, it's very wide. For example, that happened, the whole crew is around the camera, and we are discussing with the police because at the last time they changed their mind and they were kicking us out. So what we did, the actor Néstor told me what's going on and say they are kicking us out. I say what? And I told him, and he told me just start shooting, and I'm going to do the scene. So we all started to discuss with the police that they were kicking us out, just at the line of the frame, and he did it. He did the shot. They were looking at him, and I think, I don't know, he's rehearsing or something. So he did it once. He came by, and I told him, do it again. And he did it, and we took it, and we left. So the production was like that. So there was no many time, and then we shoot the corner scene when the agent is following him. So that it was a very demanding shooting, but for me it was. I had a good time. I don't know if the crew, but they were really. I couldn't make it without their support, and my family, my friends, my girlfriend that's over there. She was a big support during the production. And being here is a really, it's a big honor and a recognition of the work of the crew, the whole crew. And now Chile is making their short list for their presentation for the Oscars, the Goya, and they are including that short film, this film. So that's a very nice recognition, not for me, but to them. So thank you. And I was telling you, during the editing, I always watch this interview, this Q&A, so it's like full circle. So thank you.
Thank you, seriously. And it's, I'm so thrilled to see this audience who's stuck around, and I want to leave time in case anyone has any questions. There's a mic. I see a hand right there.
Diego, gracias. Le felicito y le agradezco for your film. Very marvelous piece of work, and I'm glad it's being discussed in the shortlist for Chile submissions to the international awards. My question is, I wonder what the reception has been like in Chile. I know that not all the reparations have been done in terms of what happened during the dictatorship, and I wonder what people's discussions have been regarding the dialogue that this film is presenting.
Thank you. We premiered the film in commercial cinemas. I don't know if you call that back in January in Chile, but it is a very small distribution. So we had like 2 weeks maybe, and it's an intense film, and like I was telling at the beginning, this is a film that we are trying that it keeps through the festival circuit. So Chilean people, they've seen it. I don't know if much. I've been to a couple of festivals there, but it has had a very good reception from the audience. The festival audience, it's a very small audience in comparison with the whole society. But, you know, it's been the typical discussion, oh, another film about the dictatorship, but for me it was a genre film, and it was a very personal film, and the dictatorship is taken like a context, or maybe like another character. So that's why, for example, you never see Pinochet, you never see a military man, not the how you say the army flag or whatever. You don't see nothing of that because it's so well known what happened or what's about that time that you don't need to explain. So I wanted to take advantage of that, and that's more or less.
I see a hand right here as well.
Sorry. I guess when I saw the models, I assumed you were making like an allusion to the films of Rithi Pan, but I suppose not from hearing your explanation.
What?
Rithi Pan, he's a documentarian. You don't know him?
I think in one festival someone asked me about him, but I haven't seen them, his films.
He's Cambodian, or I guess he's French Cambodian, and he did several films about the Cambodia genocide. But because of the nature of the genocide, there was no photographs, no films. He made models, and he had the witnesses talk about it over the models.
No, I haven't seen them. So
You should check it out. The best known one is called S21. You should watch it.
thank you, I will.
We actually had Rithipan here just earlier this year. Some of you may have caught his screenings.
I will. And for example, the connection with other films that have been asked is about, I don't know, zone of interest. For example, I've been told that I was copying that film. I think that there are very different films. That's an amazing film, but this one is a genre piece. And for example, the short film from which I based, it came before the novel of Zone of Interest. But the same kind of idea, you're living next to the horror, you don't see it, you hear it. It shows that in cinema, it's not only about the idea of the story, to be completely different films. And I think that's amazing.
I think we can take one or two more if there's any. Yeah, I see one right there.
I haven't seen the original short film. Was the concept always going to be that the man we saw was substituting himself for the man who died? That pivot in the end, was that always part of the vision of the film?
It was the vision for the future film, but in the short film, it was only he was living next to the horror. It's an old man, and you can watch the short film in YouTube. It calls Los Vecinos, The Neighbors, and it's available to watch it. It's 15-minute short film. But this idea of changing perspective, it was from the beginning to make the film. So I took the idea of the short film and I mix it with this idea of changing the perspective.
Well, if there are no more questions, I think that's as good a note to end on as any. So thank you so much, Diego, and thank you all.
Thank you.